Okay. As requested, um, I was asked to do a video on why it's so hard to move on from relationships, which is an excellent topic that many struggle with for many reasons. So let's get into it. So, firstly, it's so hard to move on from relationships in the brain because the brain activates addiction, pain, and stress response during a breakup, which I did briefly touch on some of these things in previous topics in my past videos, including when I touched on addiction, as well as certain chemical processes in the brain and when I went over attachment styles. So, attachment styles can also very much influence this, which is definitely a separate topic that we could get into again, or you could try to find my video I already did on it. But let's just start with some basics, and I'll talk about the why, the behind the scenes, and what you can do to help yourself move on from this. Okay. So quite literally, when you break up, it's similar to a withdrawal from a substance. Love and attachment trigger powerful brain systems involving dopamine and oxytocin. So dopamine, as I've said prior, is your short-term happiness. This is a lot what drug seekers seek because you want a quick, fast release. Oxytocin is your long-term happiness. Now, people sometimes think your long-term goals, like buying a house or a car, is actually a long-term happiness goal, but it's not. It's actually classified under your dopamine response. It is a short-term happiness. That's why once you buy a car, you're looking to change it or you're looking for the next best thing. Same thing, a house. You buy a house. It's great. It's lovely. Now you want to arrange it. Now you want to do different things. You want to remodel. You want to add an addition. It's a short-term response. And so you look for the next best thing. You keep craving and wanting the attention, the affection, or substance, right? Albeit, the girlfriend, the boyfriend, right? The relationship. You want that connection, okay? Now this can be affected with people who struggle with attachments. This could be someone who overly attaches too quickly, or somebody who takes a long time to trust and attach to somebody. So this sudden loss, right? Or at least that's what it feels like when you break up with someone. It feels like a sudden loss. And so involving the dopamine and oxytocin, which is produced in the brain, and it can feel like a physical wound, creating cravings and anxiety as the brain's threat detection and reward systems are in overdrive. The emotional centers of the brain become agitated, searching for the person who is no longer there, and a hyperactive default mode network can lead to obsessive rumination. So as we talked about in the last video of impulsivity, obsession, and compulsion, this comes in line with your obsession and rumination, which here's a new term. Ruminating is when it's similar to obsessing, but ruminating is usually a very negative obsession. You're obsessing on this negative feeling, so it's like instead maybe other people it takes them a couple weeks, they get over it, or maybe even a few days, or a good weekend out of friends. Some people, they move on to someone else right away, or maybe before they even break up. Everybody's different, and that also has to do with your attachment styles and all the others in the in-betweens, okay? But everybody's different. Everybody's brain works differently. Another term for ruminating can be if somebody's angry, they're holding a grudge, right? If you're angry, you're ruminating on these negative thoughts about maybe what you're going to do to somebody or what you want to say. That's ruminating. Similar to obsessive, but it's a lot more negative. You can obsess on something like exercise. You can be obsessive on exercise. Maybe it works for your body, maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's too much in your heart or your muscles, or maybe you're overworking yourself, which can lead to other issues, So too much of anything is bad. So it's good to have a good balance, right? And that's what the goal is here, is to understand where you lie on that scale. And how do we get you back to like a homeostasis? How do we get you back to a baseline that's healthy? Okay. If your baseline is like way up here, right? And this manic, unhealthy, anxiety ridden, okay, then your default mode network will bring you back to that baseline. So if you're somebody who's already anxious or already depressed, your default mode could be that sadness, that anxious high manic state, a low manic state. It all depends, right? So, but that's what we want to identify, not just in ourselves, but when we work with a professional, we want them to be able to help us discern that, help us make that good judgment of what are we actually doing? What is our brain doing behind the scenes? That's how we begin to reframe mind. I am going to tell you some tips and tricks that is going to help you rewire your own brain. However, I do always advise and encourage a licensed professional to help guide you through this process if you feel necessary. However, yes, you can do it on your own, but you likely need at least somebody else who at least is of somewhat of intelligence to kind of tell you about yourself, because like I talked about with bias blind spot, oftentimes we can't see our own kind of nuances, our own issues. Sometimes, for example, spatial awareness. Some people don't have spatial awareness. They get too close. They don't understand a boundary or personal space, right? They're not bad people. They're not. But it's like, oh, like step back, please. They might have issues with spatial awareness or boundaries. That can come from autism, any level in the spectrum, Asperger's, whatever, high functioning, doesn't matter. It can even come from just regular little social cue issues for people that maybe you don't quite qualify for autism or something of the sort, but you experience that, and that's also fine. But that is what that would be, is you have an issue in discerning proper boundaries, or maybe even reading social cues. When someone, gives you the eyes or something, can you pick that up and be like, oh, I get what you're saying without words? Nonverbal cues is what we call them. Can you pick up on nonverbal social cues? And if you can't, then, maybe you've noticed some other issues with people, or sometimes people get extra angry at you, or maybe you kind of scare some people off, and that's just a simple example for just one kind of person. There's just many, many, many other things that can lead to anything, in many different things. So, it's not black and white, like I've said before, all right? So not to get too off, I just want to give you enough because this topic is a really good topic, because the only problem with it is that it's encompassed with so many things that you otherwise would have no idea, that this video is going to be so long if we don't break it up. So I'm trying to touch on the different things that will have to do a separate video if you really want to truly understand the true ins and outs of it. But I can give you the brief behind the scenes, a broad perception of what's happening when this occurs, and we can go deeper on these things. In fact, we might need to, which is totally fine. Just let me know. But the excellent topic, because there's actually so much in this that it's crazy, and you wouldn't think that much goes into something like this. It's behind the scenes. It's subconscious. It's just what the brain is doing, and the only thing that we feel and experience is the emotion of it, the turmoil or the happiness, right? Dopamine pathways. So the love activates brain areas associated with reward and motivation. And we've talked about the reward systems. A few videos ago, I talked about the brain's reward system and how to trick the brain. Okay, so this also ties into the brain's reward system. Okay, where this is usually when these chemicals are kind of released, the dopamine and the oxytocin. Other chemicals like cortisol will be stress. Okay, just to give you an idea. And these are all different chemicals that are released to influence these specific emotions and reactions within the brain that are otherwise subconscious or unaware to you. They're just happening and you're feeling and experiencing in the moment. Okay, so ending a relationship can trigger a withdrawal-like state, similar to that of drug addiction, creating intense cravings for the ex-partner. So, for example, let's say you've lived with somebody, or they sleep over all the time, or they sleep over on the weekends. During this breakup, or even just a sudden break, even if they went on vacation, you will experience or may experience physical withdrawal. You'll have lack of sleep. You won't feel right. You'll be tossing and turning. You've got that lump, and it's just a very uncomfortable feeling. And that is quite literally your reward system kind of craving that. The person in this instance would be the drug, because they've released these dopamine and oxytocin chemicals for you, and it makes you feel good. Now, for somebody who maybe struggles with this or struggles with attachments, this can be intensified, and therefore it can be worse or even extend for a longer period of time. And so maybe you're somebody who people are like, oh my God, like, get over it already. Or you just can't shut up about it because you're just going and going and going. You're obsessing, right? And that's what it is. Impulsivity, the impulsivity of this could be you can't stop texting your ex. You just got to leave them alone, and we'll get into what we can do to create those boundaries and to kind of help like distance yourself, which is absolutely needed if you want to rewire this, because you need to create these boundaries, because the boundaries, I would presume, are either not there or at least affected for one reason or the other, if this is occurring to that extent. But if you're noticing that it's like you can't shut up about it and it's been so long now, you're still harping on it, you might have an issue. We might want to look into it. All right. Okay, so reward prediction error. So the brain becomes accustomed to expecting the rewards, like I just said, from the partner, like text or affection. When these rewards stop, it creates, but everything that I just said. So, you miss the text, you miss the affection because you're filling your reward system. And if you're somebody who maybe needs extra attention for one reason or the other, or maybe has issues, like I said, with attachment, where you get too attached too quickly, whatever the case may be, there's a plethora of reasons that this can all be intensified, and this is likely what is occurring. There's a reward prediction error. You're craving this, and that's why you're obsessing and ruminating on it. We have a problem when it has extended periods of time and when you just really can't let it go. Even if it's in the beginning, not having proper boundaries, even in the beginning of knowing when to leave somebody alone and when maybe you still have a chance. That's even part of it too, and part of another process in the brain which determines whether or not, like, are you fully aware of this, or is there other issues maybe within the brain, like autism, for example, which I will touch on in autism because I think it's important to understand. I'm going to touch on the differences between, let's say, this is neurotypical response, but most people experience just the initial loss and everything, but not everybody experiences extended or this over exaggerated process as some others may. And if you're somebody who's maybe as Asperger's or autism or some kind of spectrum, any kind of other mental disorder, that can definitely exacerbate things and exacerbate these chemicals and feelings and make it last longer. It can get worse. It can get crazy. And that's also why, you hear about the crazy stories of the boyfriend who went nuts because the girlfriend tried to leave him and killed her or something. It goes along with that. It's the other inner workings, the behind the scenes in the brain of that said individual. Okay. And that's again why I keep stressing case by case. Okay. Now, pain and stress. So physical pain. Now, rejection can activate the same brain regions that process physical pain, explaining why breakups can feel physically agonizing. So the thing about rejection is there's something called rejection sensitivity, which people who are on the spectrum can absolutely suffer from this even more so. And also other people who are on other kinds of spectrums like anxiety, depression, yada, yada, yada. And it all, again, ties in with attachment styles and other types of things and beliefs and just everything, right? This is why, again, this is such a good topic because it really touches on kind of everything I've been talking about leading up to now, but just it's all at once, right? And if you have somebody who has issues with any one of these areas or, so whatever, it can really intensify things and make it crazy. And that is just, if you're looking for the answer of why I do that or why you do that, that's why, right? Okay, and so, and again, like I said, one of the first steps to begin to rewiring is to first understanding what you're actually doing for you yourself and understanding what the terms are, etc. And then go from there. Then it's the recognition, then it's the, okay, catch yourself, then it's the let's replace actions with healthier things, okay? Stress response. The brain's threat detection system, the amygdala, interprets the separation as a danger. So the amygdala is your emotional response system, very big part of your limbic system, which is what controls all of those emotions and those chemicals. The amygdala alone has zero logic or reasoning. When you're in fight or flight, the prefrontal cortex shuts down. That's all your logic and reasoning and good judgment. That all shuts down, which is why we can make errors, big mistakes, or be forgetful. The prefrontal cortex shuts down and the amygdala remains on, okay? And that's your fight or flight. That's your pure emotion, okay? There's no logic here. There's no reasoning. It's just pure emotions, pure feeling, okay? So the brain's threat detection system, which can be activated through rejection or a loss or breakup, right? As well as many other things, but for this video, let's keep it on those topics. And so it interprets the separation as a danger, okay? Leading to anxiety, obsessive thoughts, and a stress response involving hormones like cortisol and norepinephrine. So I mentioned cortisol before is your stress hormone, okay? So when you're in this state, it's a lot of cortisol and a lot of norepinephrine, which when the cortisol is released, that's when you're feeling these oh my God, like you're panicking, okay? You don't want to lose them, and now you're starting to realize that they're gone. You're going to lose all that. So in the scenes, your brain is like, oh my God, we're going to lose the dopamine, the oxytocin. We're going to lose all that affection. We're going to lose it all. We can't have that happen. Now, if you're someone with attachment style issues as well, specifically ones that get overly attached too quickly, this is going to be extra intensified. You're going to feel like the world is ending, okay? And it probably is going to last quite a while. So, and then you have your neurochemical imbalance, which breakups can cause a drop in mood stabilizing neurotransmitters like serotonin, which is the chemical that is like your happiness, excitement, and endorphins, which help with pleasure and pain, while stress hormones increase. So as the stress hormone cortisol increasing and the norepinephrine making you a bit manic on top of that, Okay, now we're dropping in serotonin, so there's no happiness, like just bye-bye, okay? And the endorphins with help with pleasure and pain. So now we're out of whack with that too. We're just feeling pain, we're not feeling pleasure. Maybe you're even numb because those are out of whack, all right? And then the stress increases, okay? Cognitive and emotional disruption. Rumination, we touched on that before. During breakups, the brain's default mode network, which handles self-reflection, can go into overdrive. So this default mode network, which handles self-reflection, I assume would have to be associated with the prefrontal cortex because that has to do with some logic and reasoning there. And so that's shut down, like we already said. So if it's also shut down with rumination, we have no logic or better judgment to discern, hey, maybe I need to chill, that's out the window, right? And so that's why we then ruminate, we obsess, we can't get over it. This can lead to the constant loops of what if and why me questions, right? Why does this always happen to me? Why do I always get the bad end of the stick? I'm cursed. It can lead to those type of thoughts, which are ruminating, an obsessive thought that is called rumination because it's a negative obsession. It's not something that's necessarily positive or that's going to make you happy. It's something that's going to continue to defeat you within your self-image and even your moral code. And that can be very dangerous for some. Now, loss of identity, again, self-image, the core beliefs that we talked about in their last video. A partner often becomes intertwined with one's identity and social life. So maybe some people even find a spot to fit with the partner. Maybe they lost themselves entirely trying to please their partner, finding themselves doing only what their partner wants to do and not thinking of what they might want to do or even, trying to assert that. Within the relationship. They kind of take the back burner and let them lead the show, which down the line for relationships can also lead to resentment and things like that. So maybe you want to be a little bit more open and it should be balanced, right? We want to balance with everything. All right, everything is connected, like I said. So anyhow, we find ourselves wanting to intertwine with one's identity. And so when that person's separated, it almost feels like you lost a part of yourself because you've now intertwined with their social life, their friends, right? It now becomes harder because you want to talk to their friends, but maybe now their friends are like, fuck you, right? Because they're going to take their girl's side or they're going to take their boy's side, right? And maybe some still talk to you, whatever. Okay, but usually, they're going to take the sides of their friends, right? So, and that's how that happens. This disruption can cause feelings of confusion and disorientation. As the brain tries to reconcile a new reality without the person who was once a central part of it. Now, as I said before, it only takes 3 weeks to rewire the brain with consistent pattern, okay? So that's for good and bad. So if you have 3 weeks of consistent abuse, well, now you're going to be an abused type of brain pattern, okay? Battered, if you will. Okay, and that takes a different type of management, a different type of treatment, because now your core belief systems are changed. Okay, see how we tied that back in from previous video if you're watching. Now, with that being said, when you break up with this person, right, maybe even you find that you don't want to do these things anymore because this person isn't here. You don't even want to find a new reality because you wanted that to be with them. That's also part of this process because you got attached to them. You kind of wired the brain in order to fit a reality with them. This is why I said reality is different for everybody. We may quote unquote exist together in this reality, but everybody's reality is different because the perception is different, the way we handle it and our core beliefs, etc., is all different. So case by case, no two things are alike. So even if we have the same situation or even living in the same house, the perceptions will be utterly different. Nobody's reality is the same. So now let's get into people on an autism spectrum. So for people with autism, moving on from relationships is especially difficult because the brain's unique wiring intensifies emotional challenges, anxiety, and the disruption of routines. A breakup doesn't just mean losing a partner. It's a monumental shift that can create overwhelming emotional and neurological turmoil. So intensified emotional experiences, which I touched on previous. The brain differences in autism can cause emotions to feel more intense and overwhelming, making heartbreak especially painful. Now imagine, for anybody who knows anything and has experienced this, heartbreak is painful anyway. So just imagine if it's supposed to be intensified. Just imagine what it really felt like for you to have your heart broken. And now imagine that intensified times 10, times 20, depending on the person. And that's what we're dealing with when we have a person like this on the spectrum. And so it's very important to not only have an understanding of them, but also to be able to work and manage their symptoms with their type of brain. Okay? Again, case by case. Now, emotional dysregulation. Many autistic individuals experience a magnified emotional response to stress, cortisol hormone. This can be due to differences in brain regions that handle emotion processing, amygdala, making sadness and grief more pronounced and difficult to manage. There's also alexithymia, which is a high number of people with autism also have alexithymia, a condition that makes it difficult to recognize and label one's own emotions. This can cause intense and overwhelming feelings that are hard to understand or express, which complicates the grieving process. Now, as I just said, it's important to understand per individual, even if you're somebody working with the individual, what the brain is actually doing, what the core belief systems are, what type of brain do they have, because with that, the management and treatment could be different and likely will be. So with that being said, a lot of the times with alexithymia, people with autism or on the spectrum have a lot of times a hard time with social cues or spatial awareness, like boundaries, personal space, and even issues with their own amygdala and processing centers that cause more intense feelings, more production of the hormones, because they can't actually identify with their own selves what they're actually feeling. For example, they could be anxious, but they don't know they're anxious. They just have this intense feeling and they can't put words or terms to it at all. This can help by educating. But I'm not entirely sure, at least specifically with autism or at a certain level of severity, how well that would work at a certain point. However, this would also be the process for anybody. But this is to understand that it's still a bit different when we're dealing with somebody that is also on the spectrum or also has other mental illnesses as well, who might have other things that are contributing to this behavior. All right. And that is what we seek to understand and identify, so that way the individual themselves can identify it, because then that breaks down the unknown, the delusion that, like, oh my God, I have no idea what's going on. Well, now you know. So, oh, this feeling is this. Now, maybe you still have the feeling, but maybe you can sit with it a bit better. And also maybe the episodes will get shorter to eventually, with the right coping mechanisms and tricks and healthy management of symptoms, which is treatment, and rewiring. You will then notice that maybe it doesn't happen at all, or it's totally manageable. when it happens after this process occurs and work is truly done. Now, difficulty with emotional nuance. Now, autistic brains may think in more absolute terms, seeing a relationship as either good or bad. The paradox of having once loved someone who is now gone can be difficult to reconcile, causing inner conflict and confusion during a breakup. So, for example, because they have trouble identifying cues and other things as such, and maybe even communication issues, they don't get the hint, basically. And so people don't want to be rude. They might beat around the bush. And this isn't great with people on the spectrum because they really don't understand. So you might as well either just be direct or, you don't know, because they could see that, well, everything was going good, like not realizing that they gave several social cues or hints that shit wasn't good, right? And they just couldn't pick up on that. And so they went the whole time, and that's also comes with the partner not having proper communication, or maybe that individual still can't process. Maybe you can tell them till they're blue in the face and they still don't get it. That could happen too, But essentially with this, they see that, oh, it's good, because they have trouble discerning the other in-betweens, that maybe somebody else of neurotypical status, or maybe someone else who can do that well, would be able to see that, yeah, we're probably going to break up soon because this is happening and this is happening. Oftentimes they don't have that, so they just see like everything's good. They can't see these in-betweens like somebody else who can. All right? So, okay. Now, with autistic people, and with many other people, this can be with anxiety people, even depression can be good, because it helps you get up out of bed and manage different things. Okay, so I don't just want to clump it into autism. This is good for anybody. Okay, so a need for routine and predictability. Autistic brains often find comfort and stability in routines and predictability. So the sudden loss of a partner and the entire relationship structure can be devastating. Again, this is a disrupted routine. So relationships build routines around shared activities, like we talked about, intertwining social lives and lives. Okay, so communication and planning. So when a breakup occurs, this entire structure vanishes, leaving a void that causes increased anxiety and disorientation. Executive function challenges. Many autistic people experience challenges with executive function, the cognitive process that helps with planning, organization, and adapting to change. This is also very true for people with ADHD. And maybe even anxiety. You have trouble with executive function. You have trouble staying organized and staying on task and staying focused. And sometimes adapting to change because your brain works a bit differently. Now, it does not mean that you're hopeless or that that's an excuse to not do things or to not be on time or be punctual because you just can't remember. It just means that the way that we manage your symptoms and treat this is going to look a little bit different than maybe the casual set a reminder or, whatever. Maybe you need something a little bit more intense. Maybe you need a few reminders. Maybe you need alarms. Maybe you need calendars and whiteboards of crap that you got to do at breaking down every time, from even brushing your teeth to dinner to school to whatever. Okay, is it like, oh man, what the hell? Sure, but it's going to help you live a better quality life and help you rewire your brain. When you do that and stay consistent, your brain will then start to naturally do so. Okay, but sometimes it needs help, and if you can give it a little extra help or give someone else a little extra help, then why not? Same thing when you want to clean a room, especially with people with ADHD or anxiety and other types of people as well. Body doubling is a thing where maybe you don't need to clean with them, but just having you there helps them stay on task and stay focused, even if you might need to remind them, hey, let's do this section. We can break that down too, but that's also another video. Okay, so issues with executive function challenges. Okay. And after breakup, these difficulties make it much harder to create and adjust a new routine, prolonging the feeling of being lost, like I said prior. Now, there's also, I mentioned this too, severe sensitivity to rejection, which is RSD, rejection sensitivity dysphoria, a heightened sensitivity to criticism or rejection, which is also what I said in the previous videos of whether or not you can take that CC or that TLC. Remember when I said that? Okay, and this can also fall in line here, and it doesn't mean you have to be autistic. Anybody could have rejection issues, all right? But this can be a lot more amplified and a lot more common with people who are autistic or on the spectrum. So I just wanted to toss this in there because, it's not a one-size-fits-all mold, okay? Now, a heightened sensitivity to criticism or rejection can be more prevalent in autistic individuals. Amplified pain of rejection. For someone with RSD, a breakup is not just the end of a relationship, but a deeply painful confirmation of their fears of being rejected. This can be felt as intensely physical and emotional pain. So this could actually be really feelings like of pain in your body, even more than emotional pain. So it's very real. Just like I said, when things are very real up here, it can cause things in the body. When things are very real down here, it can cause things up here. Everything is connected. Okay. Past trauma. Any past experience of rejection can be re-triggered by the breakup. So if you're somebody who maybe was in foster care or left as a child, or maybe you even had a traumatic experience where your parent forgot you at the store, this can just completely re-trigger that, like a PTSD moment. Okay, and compounding the pain with memories of earlier difficult moments. Difficulty navigating social and communication changes, which is, like I said, social cues, spatial awareness. The social dynamics surrounding a breakup can be complex and confusing for anybody, making it harder for autistic people to cope with the aftermath. Misinterpreting signals. An autistic person may have missed early signs, like I said just prior, that a partner was pulling away, making the eventual breakup feel sudden, confusing, and even more devastating. That's the I thought it was going good, because they couldn't decipher the in-betweens. Okay? Now, many people can do this, not just autistic people, okay? But it's usually more prevalent in autistic people, okay? Now, communication struggles. The difficult and emotionally charged conversations that often accompany a breakup are especially challenging for many adults. For many autistic individuals who may struggle to express their feelings or understand the other person's perspective. So this is someone who has a hard time identifying their feelings, like I said before, or perhaps even verbally communicating those, whether they can't find the words or because they don't trust you enough or they just feel uncomfortable about doing so for whatever reason. And also not being able to understand and discern the other person's perspective because their brain's working completely differently, so they can't quite see how they got to that conclusion. So explaining to others. The difficulty in communicating their grief can extend to explaining the breakup to friends and family, leading to further social isolation, and lack of support. Like I said prior, being annoying, right? You prolong this, it's like, get over it already. And now you're noticing people are distancing yourselves because you can't stop obsessing and ruminating over the breakup. Now, this can be even more prevalent with people who are autistic, but this can also happen in many other cases, including BPD, bipolar, manic, depression, anxiety, ADHD, just everything, transgender, the whole fucking slew of it. All do this and can do this. You don't have to be necessarily on the spectrum, but have you be it on the spectrum, 9 times out of 10, this will likely be a thing for you. It's very common and prevalent, more so than average. Okay? Now, like I said, with the isolation of others, because your friends don't know how to get it through to you. Maybe they know you're on the spectrum, so they're like, he's just not getting it, and they don't know how to teach you otherwise, right? Or even if you're not in the spectrum, it's you, you just don't get it. You're obsessing, you're ruminating for whatever reason. Maybe you have anxiety, maybe you have ADHD, whatever the case. Maybe you got nothing, this is just you, or whatever, okay? And your friends are like, dude, like, shut up already, like blah blah blah. Maybe they even start getting nasty, or they just isolate from you because they don't know how to tell you otherwise, and it's starting to get annoying for them, right? And they don't mean anything by it, and you don't mean anything by it, but there's a lack of communication and understanding, and that is what's happening. Okay, now let me tell you how we're going to identify this and how we actually fix this. How do we actually start recognizing this and rewiring the brain, and what are some better coping mechanisms? So, to move on from a breakup, allow yourself to feel and process your emotions, but avoid getting stuck in negative thinking or reanalyzing the past. Focus on self-care through activities like exercise, healthy eating, and hobbies, and set new goals to create a new vision for your future. Now, it can also be helpful to clear physical reminders, limit contact with your ex, and lean on a supportive social circle or seek professional therapy if needed. All right? Allow yourself to grieve and heal. Feel your feelings. Acknowledge and express your emotions like sadness, anger, or confusion rather than boiling up. I want to note, which I will touch in a minute right after this, with autistics, if you don't, or someone on the spectrum, or someone who doesn't understand or can't emotionally regulate, if you don't know how to properly identify these true feelings, and it's more than just sad, anger, happiness, there's like 50 kinds of emotions. Some of them are mixed. I actually have, I'll share it. But anyway, so feel your feelings, okay? Don't bottle them up. Be patient. Understand that healing is a process and take your time. Accept the breakup. Accept the end of the relationship and give yourself permission to move forward. Focus on self-care and a new life. Prioritize your well-being. Focus on basic self-care such as eating right, exercising, and getting enough sleep. This goes hand in hand with routine. You're establishing a new routine that fits just you, not your partner. You're establishing a new routine so you can keep yourself in this pace. This will help your brain even if it sucks. Get up and do it, I promise. Now, reconnect with joy. Re-engage in hobbies and activities you love. Try new ones to create new memories. Try new things you want to do. Try doing a job you love, okay? Reconnect with things that made you happy, okay? That don't have to do with your ex, all right? Now, set new goals. Create new personal goals, no matter how small, to shift your focus to the future. Practice calming rituals. Incorporate soothing activities into your daily routine, such as meditation, yoga, journaling, or listening to music. Create distance from your ex. This is a big one. Blocking. Limit contact. Take space from your ex, which may include muting, blocking, or unfollowing them on social medias. Remove reminders. Clear out physical reminders of the relationship, such as photos, gifts, to help create difference. This includes any dates on the calendars that you guys had, whether it be upcoming or an anniversary. Get rid of it. Okay, same thing with anything on Facebook or on your socials. Just get rid of it. If you don't want to delete the photos yet, at least hide them. Put them in a private album. Something that can hide it from yourself so you're not going to look. Otherwise, just get rid of them. You can't control your own impulsive, obsessive compulsion, then you need to delete it, because you're not going to be able to stop yourself from still going and looking at them. Now, remove reminders. I just said that. Avoid rebound dating. Give yourself time to heal before rushing into a new relationship. This is crucial because we often end up with the same partners that didn't work out because we haven't fully discerned and understood like what went wrong. This is especially more so with people who may be autistic or other types of spectrum, albeit, anxiety, depression, whatever it is. Okay. So seek support. Lean on your network. Surround yourself with supportive friends and family members who can offer help and a listening ear. So this will include people who maybe have patience and actually can understand you as a person as well, and maybe have a little bit more understanding of actually how to cope with this. Now, this doesn't mean, I'll go to the bar and drink your life away. No, because that's how you create alcoholics and addicts. Okay, so pick your people wisely, all right? Which is also why it's always a good idea to consider professional help. If you are struggling to cope, consider seeking support from a therapist or counselor to get an objective perspective and coping strategies. Maintain routines. Stick to your reliable daily habits, as familiarity can provide comfort during a time of change. Set personal boundaries. Decide what actions you will take to ensure your own wellness moving forward, as outlined by Autism Speaks, so you can check that out. Process your emotions. Talk to someone. Share your feelings with a trusted friend, family member, or therapist who can listen without judgment. Use creative expression. Express your feelings through hobbies like journaling, art, or music. Acknowledge your feelings. Give yourself permission to feel sad, angry, or anxious without judgment. It's normal for these feelings to be intense after a breakup. Consider a breakup funeral. A symbolic ritual can help you say goodbye to the relationship. You can write a letter to your ex, list the things that didn't work, then put the mementos out of sight or out of the house. This does not mean send a letter to your ex or send that big long message. It just means write it for yourself to understand what went wrong. Write it with a therapist or a trusted friend who understands a little bit more in depth of this. And then burn it, get rid of it, whatever. Crumple it up. Okay, that could be good for anybody. This isn't just for autism. It's just a little bit more in depth, and I want to recognize the two differences. Well, all differences, but specifically because it is definitely a very different brain, even from the rest. So I think it's worth a look. Patient with yourself. Understand that healing takes time, and there is no right timeline for getting over a breakup. Connect with others, stay connected, don't isolate yourself. Staying in contact with supportive friends and family can reduce feelings of loneliness, according to AID Canada. So, building new habits and perspectives. Boost your brain's reward system. Actively replace old habits with new healthy ones that boost your mood. This includes exercising, which releases endorphins and dopamine, and engaging in hobbies that challenge your prefrontal cortex. Like I said, the prefrontal cortex is where your logic, reasoning, and good judgment come from. In these states where you're obsessive or you're impulsive or you're ruminating or you're compulsive during a breakup, when you're angry, when you're sad, the prefrontal cortex shuts down and only the amygdala remains. That and probably some memory, all right, which also is in the amygdala, as well as another part of the brain for core memory and long term. But point being is that the logic and reasoning is shut down, like I said. So when you boost your brain's reward system, like we talked about in tricking the brain, you actively replace the old habits with new. Just like I talked about with the OCD or the impulsivity and obsession and compulsion video just prior, when I said that creating the new actions, when we replace the old unhealthy actions with new healthier coping mechanisms, which in turn rewires the brain. Everything's connected. It's like killing multiple birds with one stone, which is exactly how I like to operate anyway, so I just kind of like to do that regardless. Now, seek healthy dopamine sources. Healthy dopamine sources. That means that not drugs, not alcohol, right? Instead of the connection you're used to, find new sources of pleasure and security. This could be anything from spending time in nature, learning a new skill, or getting a pet. This also means not running from person to person, relationship to relationship. That is also an unhealthy dopamine seeking source. We want healthy dopamine seeking source, so something that's outside of a person, nature, a pet, seeking a new skill or trade, something like that. Art, something that makes you feel good, but that isn't going to affect your health or your mental health, as such, drugs, alcohol, or from jumping from partner to partner or sex to sex type of thing. Practice gratitude. Regularly focusing on what you are grateful for can help shift your mindset away from the loss and towards the positive aspects of your life. Keeping a gratitude journal is a great way to do this. Focus on your identity and future. Reconnect with who you are outside of the relationship. Engage in activities that help you rediscover your identity. Set new goals and visualize a positive future for yourself. Long-term strategies. Practice self-reflection. Regularly reflect on the relationship and the breakup itself to find positive lessons learned. Writing these reflections down can be particularly effective. Use visualization and affirmations. Visualize a positive future and use positive affirmations to counteract negative self-talk and rewrite your neural pathways. Build new social connections. Make an effort to reach out to friends, join clubs, or volunteer. Building new social bonds is essential for healing and can help trick your brain into forming new attachment circuits. Be patient and consistent. Healing is a process, not a single event. Implementing small, consistent habits over time is more effective than waiting for time to heal passively. Remember that progress isn't always linear. So I want to touch real quick on the visualization and affirmations. So when you visualize positive future, that's like visualizing you like getting a trophy or getting a new job. It's also another positive affirmation would be writing this down or setting a goal. We also want to make sure that we're setting realistic goals. So for example, if a goal is I want to be president, that's a great goal and it doesn't mean you can't do it, but that's a long term. We need something for the short term that's going to lead you up to becoming a president. Does that make sense? So we don't want to set too far in the future, and we don't want to set something that's already in the past and not going to happen. We want right now. So what can you do in the now that's going to lead you up to this goal? And you don't want to go too far ahead because it can get overwhelming. Start small. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Now, implement cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT techniques. CBT is a well-researched therapeutic approach that can help manage the challenging thoughts, feelings, and behaviors associated with a breakup. Identify and reframe thoughts. Breakups can lead to negative thought patterns like, I'll never find love again, or I'm unlovable. A therapist can help challenge and replace these more compassionate and realistic alternatives. Journaling. Regularly writing down thoughts can help externalize and slow down a racing mind. This can make it easier to identify negative self-talk and work through overwhelming emotions in a structured way. Mindfulness. Mindfulness practices encourage staying present and observing feelings without judgment. This can help individuals tolerate distress and avoid being consumed by negative emotions. Create an emotional toolkit. Work with a therapist to develop a set of personalized coping strategies. This toolkit can include practical techniques to use when emotions feel out of control. Restore routine and structure. Autistic individuals often find comfort and stability in predictable routines. A breakup represents a major disruption, so intentionally creating new structures is vital. Establish new daily habits. Reestablish reliable routines such as morning and bedtime rituals. This can help re-anchor your daily life and bring sense of normalcy back. Plan out tasks. Use a mind map or project plan to break down practical tasks related to the breakup and moving forward. Example, finding a new living situation if you lived with that person. This can make an overwhelming situation feel more manageable. Engage in special interest. Leaning into special interests and hobbies can provide comfort, focus, and sense of accomplishment during a difficult period. Practice self-compassion and emotional processing. It is important to acknowledge and process emotions rather than bottling them up, which can delay healing. Allow for grieving. Recognize that it is valid to grieve the loss of the relationship. Give yourself permission to feel sad, angry, or anxious, and remind yourself that healing takes time. Use expressive activities. Creative outlets such as art, music, or journaling can help process emotions in a nonverbal way. Embrace a unique emotional experience. Understand that your emotional landscape is valid, even if it differs from neurotypical norms. Be patient with yourself as you learn to process your feelings. Build social support. While seeking support can be challenging for some, it is an essential part of the healing process. Seek professional guidance. A therapist who specializes in autism can provide emotional support, coping strategies tailored to your needs, and a non-judgmental space to process your feelings. Connect with trusted people. Reach out to friends or family members who offer comfort and understanding. A strong support system can provide invaluable guidance during this challenging time. Consider support groups. Connecting with other autistic individuals can foster a sense of community and shared experience, reminding you that you are not alone. Use neuroscience-backed methods. Certain activities can promote new neural connections and help regulate the nervous system after the stress of a breakup. Prioritize sleep. Sleep is crucial for memory consolidation and creating new neural connections, which helps the brain adapt to change. This is also what we call neuroplasticity. I've went over that definition in previous videos. Exercise. Regular physical activity helps produce brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF, a protein that promotes neuronal growth and can improve mood. Manage hormones in the nervous system. Techniques like physiological sighting breath work can help lower stress hormones like cortisol. This can be mindfulness breathing or other types of breathing techniques like boxed breathing. Avoid unhealthy distractions. Be mindful of using alcohol or other substances to numb the pain, as I said prior, as this can hinder, and also be careful who you associate yourself with during these times, because if the people who are if the people in your support group deal with emotional dysregulation in unhealthy ways, then it's not good to kind of associate yourself with that, or kind of, you know what I'm saying? Because it can create a lot bigger problems, okay? And you don't want it. Now, as this can hinder the healing process and create further issues. All right. So, that's the gist. And, definitely comment or message me any other further questions if you want me to break down something down further. Try to go look back at my older videos if you're interested, because I do have attachment styles on there. Don't hesitate to watch the reward system on the brain and tricking the brain that I did previous to my last video prior to this. So yeah, I'll keep them coming. I'll break this down a little bit more as well, as far as attachment styles and other things, and any other requests or anything like that. Feel free to comment or message me privately if you feel you need to do so. With that being said, again, have a blessed day. It's definitely a nicer day than yesterday. Go enjoy that. And try to think about something other than your ex. All right. Love you. Bye.